What's up, everybody? It's your boy 2019's Peanut Butter Falcon, starring Shia LaBeouf, a supremely underrated movie that celebrates life and independence and friendship in a really compelling way. And it's about a young man with Down syndrome who escapes a residential nursing home to pursue his dream of becoming a professional wrestler and meets Shia LaBeouf's character, and the two go on this very Tom Sawyer-coded adventure to fulfill his dream. Great movie. You should watch it. AKA Reed from Famous Nerd. Today's video is a love letter to one of the best albums of all time. If you end up liking this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. You can also join these beautiful people on the screen right now by clicking the join button to become a member of the channel, whereupon you will get exclusive access to members-only videos as well as access to every video a few days early. You can also join the Shameless Nerd Discord at the link in the description and email me with any questions, comments, concerns, or coupons for 24 packs of Diet Coke with lime at readfromshamelessnerd@gmail.com. All right, let's get into it. I've recently made videos about some big topical, kind of stressful topics like AI and corporate America and stuff, and I love them and I love doing that, but I grew up on YouTube and I believe in the internet. I believe in the original mission of YouTube and of the open and free internet, just like strange people on their computer sharing about random shit, and I want to make sure that I stay true to my initial purpose for this channel. The YouTube algorithm so heavily incentivizes over-nicheification, picking something that works and then making the same video over and over again, and I just refuse to do that. I'm not a tech cynic YouTuber. That's the last thing that I want to be. I am a nerd. That's all that this channel is. It's for the weird intersection at which nerds and theater kids coincide. And at least every now and then, I want to make sure to make time to make a video that I know probably won't do as well as some of my other videos numbers-wise, but is more for me and for those initiated, like my Pokemon movie video or my video on Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. This is one of those videos. This is a video about what I believe to be one of the best, if not the best written, most gut-wrenchingly tragic and beautiful albums ever made, and that album is The Midnight Organ Fight by Frightened Rabbit. So first, a little background. Frightened Rabbit was a Scottish indie band originally formed in 2003 as a solo project for the lead vocalist and composer Scott Hutchison, before becoming a full band including Scott's brother Grant on drums, Billy Kennedy on guitar and bass, Andy Monahan on keys and guitar, and additional guitarist Simon Liddell. The band has a really interesting sound, which is a blend of folk and blues and pop and indie rock, shades of a wide variety of artists. Everything from a bit of Vampire Weekend to a bit of Tracy Chapman and Bob Dylan and later era MGMT and Manchester Orchestra and the National. Some folksy kind of singer-songwritery blend of an indie pop version of all of that, but also none of that. Frightened Rabbit's first studio album, Sing the Grays, was released in 2007, followed by the album that we're talking about today in 2008, which is The Midnight Organ Fight, their first album to see some level of success, receiving critical acclaim and vaulting the band to an opportunity to support Death Cab for Cutie on a UK and Irish tour later that year. The band went on to release 4 other full-length studio albums before Scott Hutchison's tragic death by suicide in 2018, and has since disbanded, with Scott's brother Grant saying after Scott's passing, "The band does not exist without Scott." And Grant and his family started Tiny Changes, a mental health charity named after a line in one of Frightened Rabbit's best songs, which we'll talk about today, called Head Rolls Off. And Scott Hutchison was a master-level, all-time great songwriter, and the 3 albums after Midnight Organ Fight, Winter of Mixed Drinks, Pedestrian Verse, and Painting of a Panic Attack, were all truly great albums as well, but there is something entirely transcendent and gripping, haunting, and deeply special about Midnight Organ Fight. The sound of the music on the album is at once very spacey and ethereal, polished and wide in scope, but also extremely intimate and raw, human and messy, with these sometimes strange song structures that build and build just before dropping off and sending you flying, or interlude sections within songs perfectly placed to lull you to sleep before just hitting you in the face with this unexpected climax of the song. Songs like the opening track Modern Leper, which sounds like a quirky Tracy Chapman almost acoustic ballad on LSD, and then drops into this massive wall of sound and this anthemic, almost dashboard confessional kind of chorus, or The Twist, which sounds like an outsider music version of like early rock and roll with this haunting cry-like delivery of Scott's vocals. The album is full of extremely interesting sounds, sometimes super fun and dancey, and sometimes soul-crushingly sad and orchestral. But the most transcendent aspect of this album, the reason why it's so important to me, the reason why I'm talking about it today, is the absolutely singular Scott Hutchison's songwriting. This album does one of my favorite things in songwriting, which is take these massively complicated and hyper-specific emotions, universalize them, make them relatable, and express them in a way that just pierces you. As you listen to this album, you are just skewered by feelings you often sort of inevitably have had and didn't even know that you've had. Scott puts words to feelings you've never been able to explain. He sheds light on situations you were unaware you can even relate to. The album explores themes of feeling alien in your own body, feeling deeply othered and isolated, deep insecurity, themes of depression and suicidal ideations, which of course is doubly moving because tragically, of course, Scott Hutchison did go on to take his own life years later. Themes of complexity of a breakup, how jealousy and regret merge with heartbreak and the balance of like love and lust and anxious attachment. Themes of religious questioning and yearning, longing for a place in the universe. This album is just absolutely packed with incredibly dense and unique storytelling and ideas. It's just insane how much fits within the confines of this album. So the opening track, Modern Leper, establishes both the central character of the album, a semi-autobiographical character in the throes of a super complicated and toxic relationship, and it also establishes one of the major themes of the album, the deeply insecure and self-loathing feeling of being lonely, being isolated. And it does both of these things in the just devastating first line of the album. A cripple walks amongst you, all you tired human beings. From the literal first line of the album, we know exactly what is happening. That sickening, sick feeling in your physical body when you're feeling deeply sad, accompanied by this unshakable feeling that, like, they know, that everyone's looking at you, everyone sees that you're not like them. Oh, it just gives me chills. He's got all the things a cripple has not, 2 working arms and legs, and vital parts fall from his system and dissolve in Scottish rain, and vitally he doesn't miss them, he's too fucked up to care. I genuinely am unsure if I've ever read a more imagery-laden verse of a song, anything that paints a visual in the way that this verse does. You hear this verse and you are incapable of missing the deeply visceral quality of what the narrator is going through. It's such rich and disturbing symbolism, the idea of a man literally falling apart, parts of his body dissolving in the rain, and him just not even caring about it because of the mental state that he's in. I would never in a million years be able to express that feeling in such haunting verse, but I know that feeling, and I've never had it expressed to me in such a piercing way. And in the chorus of this song, we see the other side of this narrative that carries throughout the album, this toxic and convoluted relationship between the 2 characters. Is that you in front of me, coming back for even more of exactly the same? You must be a masochist to love a modern leper on his last leg. The narrator is so broken, so confused, and in suffering from his condition that he can't even make out that his partner is the one there. He's going blind. He's not even capable of comprehending her loving him, loving a leper on his last leg. And in the reprise of the chorus, a few lyrics are slightly changed, which is something that Scott does throughout the album in a masterful way we'll talk a lot about, like reframing lyrics to service the development of the story by like super efficiently changing just a couple words here and there, and it leads into the final chorus like this instead. I'm lying on the ground now, and you walk in through the only door. Well, I've lost my eyesight like I said I would, but I still know. And then the chorus changes slightly to present a still distorted and sad, but ultimately hopeful ending to the song. I still know that is you in front of me, and you are back for even more of exactly the same. Well, are you a masochist? You love a modern leper on his last leg. You're not ill, and I'm not dead. Doesn't that make us the perfect pair? You should sit with me, and we'll start again, and you can tell me all about what you did today. And here we see the tragically toxic nature of the pair's relationship. As his partner does come back for him, and he does start to feel like there's hope again, he's blind now, but he still knows it's her there, and it's not you must be a masochist to love a modern leper. It's now a question, Are you a masochist? And then the more definitive, you love a modern leper. He comes to believe it himself. And then I love the way that this song ends. This is something that I adore that Scott does throughout the album, which is after this epic sort of journey the song takes you on, it ends by highlighting the beauty in the mundane. After all of this insane, visceral, sometimes disturbing and beautiful storytelling on the song, it ends saying they'll sit and he'll listen to what she did today. And I think that's so beautiful and tragic because it's like acknowledging that he's not unique, that this situation is normal and human and horrible and wonderful, and ultimately the happy ending that he's so incredibly desperate for could be as unremarkable as exchanging pleasantries after a day of work. It just, like, that tears me apart. The second song, I Feel Better, is a little bit more literal and straightforward than the first, but it was like the lead single for the album, and it's still supremely written. It's just like, I'm like a modern leper truther. Anyway, this song doubles down on the idea of the painful back and forth in this relationship between the two characters, and it tells a story that's perfectly easy to follow, but is again masterfully poignant in its simplicity. I left our house without a clue and left New York City, girl, without you. But the sun does shine in this place some days, and even when there's clouds, there isn't always rain. I really love these last two lines here, which I think really interestingly put that there is good in the bad and bad in the good, even on supremely bad days or supremely good days. Even when there are clouds, even when the bad days come, there might not necessarily be rain, as in it might not all be bad, or sometimes on a bad day, the sun does shine a little bit in some places, and so on and so forth. I love nuance and good and bad kind of messaging in general, and that's a really fun way of putting it here. And then it goes into the chorus, which is a super efficiently written, like, gut punch. I'll stow away my grays in a padlock case in a padlocked room, only to be released when I sing all the songs I wrote about you. This is the last one I'll do. My Grays is a reference to a song in the previous record, Sing the Grays, in which the Grays refers to depression. And here the narrator is telling the person he loves that he's moving on, or that he's trying to, that he's determined to stop this back and forth, to like forfeit, essentially, and drag himself forward, lock the songs, literally and metaphorically, the Grays, literally and metaphorically, away, and only take them out to sing, again, literally and metaphorically, as in literally to perform the songs, and then also metaphorically to like vent about her in the privacy of the padlock room. This is the last song I'll write about you, he says, like the send-off song. But then in the bridge, right before the song ends, we see the back and forth, the non-linear grieving process of mourning a relationship. I feel better and worse, and then better than ever, than ever, than ever. I feel much better and worse, and then better than ever, than ever, than ever, than ever. It's just impossible. It's the push and pull of mental instability following something like that, feeling better and then worse and then better again and so on. And I think it's really poignant to just call it what it is like that. I think the straightforwardness of that makes it so much more effective there. It's not pretty. It's not poetic. It sucks. And that's what this song expresses so well. The next song is maybe my favorite on the album, and that is Good Arms versus Bad Arms, which is another like body horror kind of symbolism, which I find super fascinating and which kind of carries throughout the album, this like body horror kind of imagery, which we'll talk more about as we go. Arguably the second most gut-wrenching song in the album to me. We'll get to the number one spot later. Good Arms versus Bad Arms is another extremely interesting concept exploring self-loathing and a little self-indulgent self-pity following our protagonist through this toxic back and forth. The song opens with the universal experience that we all have of being forced to see your ex with someone else and draw comparisons between that person and yourself. Good Arms versus Bad Arms will win hands down. They are built to hold and fit. Look how far they go around. You don't need these now that you found another pair, and the difference is astounding, I should expect. Except, and then it goes on later. The intrusive thoughts following a breakup of the person you love being held by someone else is already one of the worst feelings that there is, how that just gnaws at you and lives in your gut. And then to truly believe, to fully internalize and ultimately agree that this person has kind of made the right call, that they've done better, is just heartbreaking. And this is such an interesting way to put that, to look at the arms, to use the body symbolically as a means of drawing the comparison. The human body as a symbol runs throughout this album. The separation of like an internal monologue and perspective of the mind from the body, which makes even more cutting the theme of feeling alien, of feeling trapped in one's body, that you can trace throughout the album in its entirety. Good Arms versus Bad Arms is maybe like the pinnacle of that, body versus body. And nothing gets me more in movies or music or TV or poetry or whatever than someone like working their ass off to stay stoic in the face of great sadness, or like to self-sacrifice. And that's what the narrator does as we approach the chorus. The girl in question tries to come back to him, and the narrator refuses her, not of jealousy or of pettiness, but from the understanding that she's truly better off without him. Leave the rest at arm's length. Keep your naked flesh under your favorite dress. Leave the rest at arm's length. When they reach out, don't touch them. Don't touch them. He's begging her for the strength to follow through on what he knows is the right choice for the two to stay apart, even though she's begging for him to ultimately have sex with her. He knows it's inevitable that he's going to reach out with his bad arms, and he tells her, don't touch them. Don't answer my phone calls. Don't come back to me, etc. And then probably my favorite verse on the whole album. I decided this decision some 6 months ago, so I'll stick to my guns, but from now on, it's war. And those lines kind of break me because I've been through that. I've been in the position of knowing it's better that I and this person are not together, but it's impossible to follow through on. It's impossible to quiet the war inside your mind trying to keep from crawling back to this person. It's war. It's loud. It's untenable. And we also see the timeline, like how long the narrator's been going through this. 6 months ago is the point at which the decision was made to sever ties, and he's saying from now on, it's war. It's already been at least 6 months of utter turmoil, and it's just getting started. 2 favorite lines on the album alert. I'm armed with the past and the will and a brick. I might not want you back, but I want to kill him. And there's no lyric breakdown here. It's just raw, it's honest, confessional, and horrible, and beautiful. Scott Hutchison does this masterfully, balancing sections of poetic language and metaphor with these moments of painfully literal and plain songwriting that is made to hit even harder due to those poetic, deep, and symbolic sections. And that's how, again, we see Scott slightly shift the language in the final repetitions of the chorus. Leave the rest at arm's length. Just roll over, boy, and don't make me do this. Leave the rest at arm's length. I'm armed to the teeth, and I'm heavy set. Leave the rest at arm's length. I'm not ready to see you this happy. Leave the rest at arm's length. I'm still in love with you. Can't admit it yet. It's like reading someone's diary, but that's what Scott does so well. It's like reading your own diary. The next song, Fast Blood, is like if Sex on Fire by Kings of Leon was a good song. It's a sex song. It's an elongated sort of euphemism, but it's a really important part of the larger narrative taking place in the album, showing how these two characters in the central relationship began their relationship in the first place. The album's title, Midnight Organ Fight, which comes from a line in the first verse of this track, is a tongue-in-cheek reference to Titian's Venus and Organist and Little Dog, painted in the 1500s, which highlights the musicality of sex, the subtle and inexplicable dance therein, and the connection between the emotion and emotive capacity of music to the emotion and emotive capacity of sex and love. Fast Blood is a story of a one-night stand that kind of never ended. From the chorus, hurricanes through me, and then it rips my roof away with her fire heads. This is the longest kiss goodnight. The two found themselves in bed, almost coming to afterward after realizing what had happened, after what was meant to be a kiss goodnight, which essentially kind of spiraled out of control. There's some rich symbolism throughout this song, but ultimately it's a love letter to the first time the two were together in that way, a celebration of what was once beautiful and is kind of torturous now. Then after Fast Blood, which is one of the only songs on this album which isn't gut-wrenchingly horrible, it's maybe melancholy and bittersweet, but not it's no modern Leper. And then in the middle of this album, right after this, we do get one brief reprieve, one moment of light and happy and fun. There's one light and fun little track that serves as this turning point thematically in the album. The track listing on this album also is written masterfully, like everything else is. We're introduced to the complexity of this relationship, the self-doubt, the toxicity, the back and forth, the breakup and relapse, the self-loathing and misery, and importantly, we get one moment of celebration about their relationship, and that is track 5, which is Old Fashioned. And this is the only time on the album that I can say that this track's pretty simple and uncomplex and sweet. It's about being present in the moment with your partner, turning off the TV and turning the radio on, dancing, and just existing for a moment with the person that you love. And he pleads to his partner, put the wall clock in the top drawer, turn off the lights so we can see, which is a line that I love. We will waltz across the carpet, so give me the soft static of the open fire and the shuffle of your feet. Oh, let's get old-fashioned, back to how things used to be. If I get old-fashioned, would you get old-fashioned with me? And it's just a beautiful sentiment about slowing down, about unplugging a little bit, about being present and celebratory about the love that you're getting to experience. And then we get right back to our regularly scheduled programming, which of course is gut-wrenching sadness. So playing on the old-fashioned theme, we get the twist, which takes that fun and upbeat kind of like ragtimey sound and then flips it on its head. The twist is a euphemism, do the twist as a reference to that like musicality and sex that I mentioned earlier. And as we'll see, kind of bitterly commenting on it, because this time it's not a celebration, it's not love, it's the opposite. It's a symptom of the way our character's relationship is tearing the protagonist apart. Do the twist in the twisting outfit, the loose ties with the loose limp wrists. Lift your dress enough to show me those shins. Let your hair stick to your forehead. I really like the way it keeps the like roaring 20s flapper girl era motif, like sarcastically saying, show me those shins, which I think is a really funny line there. But we open with what seems to be another upbeat, uplifting, lighthearted image, the twist, a silly line, sweaty while dancing, music, fun. And then immediately this facade is just shattered. And we see how self-loathing and desperate and sad our narrator is, because you twist and whisper the wrong name. I don't care, and nor do my ears. Twist yourself around me. I need company. I need human heat. I need human heat. And here we're introduced to another theme that will rear its head even more strongly later, which is the complicated longing for connection that's from feeling alien and feeling lonely, the need for human heat for body, when in reality we know, and the narrator knows all too well, the separation of body and mind. And the narrator knows that that's not really what he's in need of. It's like a placeholder. It's why the twist is shallow and silly and seemingly lighthearted. The tonality of the song emphasizes the shallowness of trying to replicate real connection and love through meaningless sex. Plus the just devastating whisper the wrong name, I don't care, and nor do my ears. That is so visceral and sad. The second verse is a pitiful and like tragic admission by the narrator that he just doesn't care. He thinks so lowly of himself that he's fine with pretending, when the dramatic irony of the song, of course, is that we know, and Scott in real life knows, that he's not fine with pretending, that the sex isn't actually what he's in need of. Let's pretend I'm attractive, and then you won't mind, you can twist for a while. It's the night, I can be who you like, and I'll quietly leave before it gets light. And then in the final reprise of the chorus, we have like maybe the most clever, subtle change in the wording of the chorus, like I talked about on the whole album. Like I mentioned earlier, Scott's just like a master of this. I've never seen this executed as well as he does, like multiple times in this album, of ending a song with this complete like blindside car crash of a lyrical change that you hardly even notice a lot of the time. Here we see the twist take a new meaning altogether as the lyrics change slightly. Twist and whisper the right name. I'm David, please. The twist is that you're just like me. You need company. You need human heat. You need human heat. The first two lines here are, of course, tragic because we see the narrator have a brief moment of honesty with himself as he pleads for the girl to call him by his real name, which is interestingly complicated by the fact that Scott Hutchison's name is still not David. So I'm not sure, honestly, like what the implication is there, if any, or if it's meant to just be like a character, or if it's adding another layer of like self-preservational, like untruth that the narrator can't even admit to her the truth when he's trying to. I don't really know there. But then the twist is that you're just like me, you need company, you need human heat. And all of a sudden, we see the narrator understand that these two are both doing the same thing to each other. They're protecting themselves by participating in the very thing that hurts them the most. Also, that's just a genius way of recontextualizing the twist. From the dance to being the twist, like, you know, like the twist at the end of a story or something. That's so like small and clever. It's just like that's a weird form of genius that I can't replicate. I could never do that. After Bright Pink Bookmark, which is an instrumental interlude, we are met with Head Rolls Off, which features the line after which the 10-year anniversary of this album is named, which features many legendary acts and fans of Scott's doing covers of every song on the album in honor of his passing, which is titled Tiny Changes. In Head Rolls Off, we are again met with this theme of body versus mind and the symbolic meaning of the human body as it relates or doesn't relate to the human existence. And we take a brief break from the central narrative of this album and move into a related one that exists largely as like a result of the central narrative. And that is the theme of like death and religion and taking one's own life and the afterlife. Head Rolls Off is a song that features an absolutely beautiful sentiment about working as hard as you can to make tiny changes to Earth while you are here, because that's all that we have. And somehow this morbid and ultimately pessimistic, I think, song is simultaneously so cathartic and uplifting and like a nice thought. It's so weird, so though, like everything else on this album, precariously balanced. As the lyrics state to open the song, Jesus is just a Spanish boy's name. How come one man got so much fame? To enemy, it's pointless to anybody that doesn't have faith. Give me the cloth, and I'll wipe my face. This is one of the densest stanzas I've ever heard in a song, to me. And like, maybe that's my uneducatedness, but give me a chance here. There is a lot packed into these 5 lines, but ultimately, it's just a very specific and poignant point, which is that lots of people find comfort in religion, right? But for those that don't believe in Christianity or any other religion for that matter, where are they meant to find that comfort? The narrator is wrestling with this because he's deeply sad and he's having suicidal ideations ultimately to varying degrees. But part of what is keeping him alive is that lack of comfort, that lack of belief in an afterlife, which makes him even more resentful of it and more secular, more literal in his interpretation of the world, more Jesus is just a Spanish boy's name. And then give me the cloth, referencing the veil of Veronica, which was used to wipe Jesus's face on the way to the crucifixion and then was imbued with like healing powers according to the Bible. And also to the phrase take the cloth, which means to join the clergy, to become a priest. And so the narrator is saying 2 things at once there on either side of like the argument. On one hand, if he were to be given the healing cloth, he would wipe his face. He would believe. He longs for healing. He longs for there to be some deeper meaning to life. And if he was given some evidence, he would excitingly believe it and be appreciative of it. But on the other hand, the other meaning of this is him being dismissive, him poking fun at like the palaver, like the sanctimoniousness of religion by wiping his face with this sacred cloth. To me, that might be the single most like impressive line on the album. There's so much significance packed into this very short, like efficient line. It's just like chef's kiss of a line. And then in the chorus, we are met with another example of what was perhaps Scott Hutchison's greatest superpower as a songwriter, and that is juxtaposition or like nuance or maybe even self-contradiction in tonality, as the chorus is another in a long list of stanzas throughout this album that feel optimistic and encouraging and beautiful and nihilistic and pessimistic and depressed at the same time. When it's all gone, something carries on, and it's not morbid at all. It's just when nature's had enough of you. When my blood stops, someone else's will not. When my head rolls off, someone else's will turn. And while I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to earth. When you die, according to the narrator, there is something, some intangible energy that carries onward, and that seems to be enough for the narrator. It's not heaven, it's not an afterlife, it's somehow secular. It's like a passive energy pouring into others who are left living, or perhaps into the world itself. And it's not morbid, it's just that when nature's had enough of you. What a strange-ass argument for accepting one's mortality. And it comes with a charge, a mission. And for the narrator, that is to accept your death, but to live your life while you're living and to make tiny changes to Earth. That's your legacy. That's all that you have and all that you can do. And before we continue, I want to acknowledge that Scott Hutchison, you have done that. I've never seen comment sections more confessional and diary-like regarding the importance that this album has for so many people who have heard it, the ways that it has changed people, saved people who can relate all too well to this album's narrative and thematic statements. That is making tiny changes to Earth on the biggest scale possible. And like, obviously Scott's not around and not watching this video, but I want to like thank him for that. Anyway, after the message about transformation and the weird Scott Hutchison brand of like cynical optimism in Head Rolls Off, we plunge right back into the album's central narrative, a related message about transformation and evolution packaged in a far less positive and far more specific song in the track My Backwards Walk. My Backwards Walk is a retrospective about defining oneself relationally and losing one's sense of self in one's partner, which I sadly have been prone to do at times in my life, and wanting to change but not knowing how or really why to change, apart from knowing that it's what your partner needs or wants, and how that doesn't work, but it's all that you can muster when you're in that sort of situation. And the entirety of that messaging is encapsulated in just the first 2 stanzas alone. I'm working on my backwards walk, walking with no shoes or socks, and when the time rewinds to the end of May, I wish we'd never met and then met today. I'm working on my faults and cracks, filling in the blanks and gaps, and when I write them out, they don't make sense. I need you to pencil in the rest. I love the line, I wish we'd never met, then met today. Knowing that and being thankful that the partner is the reason the narrator has grown and changed so much, but also knowing that the resentment that's built, that same history for which he's so thankful, is the very reason their relationship is so problematic right now. If he could only be who he is now because of her and start over, but you can't. And so he just continues to walk backwards. I'm working on erasing you. I just don't have the proper tools. I get hammered, forget that you exist. There's no way I'm forgetting this. There's a fun wordplay there with tools and hammered, a dark sort of pun about not having the tools to get over her, mentally speaking, and then trying to use alcohol as a tool to do so. And of course, that not working. And then I'm working hard on walking out. Shoes keep sticking to the ground. My clothes won't let me close the door because the trousers seem to love your floor. And here we're met with another reference about these two's toxic and sexually charged relationship, that there is something special, something magical about the connection that they have, that they keep being dragged back to each other because of the sex, because his clothes won't let him close the door. And no matter how hard he tries to move on, to leave the rest at arm's length, as it were, he can't. And so he walks backwards. And then the final stanza before the song repeats this strangely lighthearted and silly refrain as it fades out, saying, "You're the shit and I'm knee deep in it," which almost like pokes fun at how self-serious the rest of the song is up to that point. "I've been working on my backwards walk. There's nowhere else for me to go except back to you just one last time. Say yes before I change my mind." We see that the narrator's on and off again partner is not wholly innocent herself, that the two are doing this to each other, this unhealthy and toxic begging and pleading and then removing themselves and then crying and crawling back to each other. And he tells her, "Say yes before I change my mind." She's begged for him to come back, and now he's asking for her back, and she's the one being apprehensive. And he wields his not coming back to her as the mechanism by which he's going to convince her to take him back. And I love how convoluted this all gets in such a short stanza. It's that efficiency, that Scott Hutchison efficiency that he was just a master of. That efficiency in the writing on this album is just incredible. And then after My Backwards Walk, we are met with what for many people is the climax of the narrative, the high point of the album, and I'm certainly not interested in making a case against that, because Keep Yourself Warm is one of the most visceral and gutting and honest and pointed songs I've ever heard in my life. Keep Yourself Warm opens with a hauntingly beautiful delivery of a very simple refrain. Scott repeats, "I'll get my hole," in a haunting crescendo before falling into the first verse, where we're given a clue as to what the hell he's talking about there when he says, "It's a choo-choo train, a rocket launch. If we have a hormone race, I'm bound to finish first." I love the phrase hormone race. I love the innuendo in rocket launch, and then I love the silly pun in finish first. The hole is exactly what you think it is, and it's gross and flattened on purpose. Keep Yourself Warm is a song about that, about meaningless sex, trying to move on from a deeply meaningful relationship by having casual sex while dating and feeling empty and guilty and disgusting about it. The song continues, "Can you see in the dark? Can you see the look on your face? The flashing white light's been turned off. You don't know who's in your bed." An encounter at a nightclub with the flashing lights and the excitement and intrigue becomes the unexciting, illuminating darkness of a dim room. And the narrator questions the rhetorical you, talking about both himself and the complicated partner the whole album's about, at once, about whether he and this partner, who's implied to be doing the same thing, can be honest with themselves about what it is that they're doing. That human heat, referenced in Twist as something deeply desirable and something after which the narrator pines so desperately, becomes appalling and disgusting to him now. And then the chorus. "It takes more than fucking someone you don't know to keep warm. Do you really think for a house beat you'll find your love in a hole?" The first part here is obviously pretty straightforward, just slashing you in half. That won't keep you warm. That isn't going to heal those wounds. That's not going to make you feel whole. No pun intended. And then in the second part here, "Do you really think for a house beat that you'll find your love in a hole?" is a reference to the house beat of the nightclub, 120 BPM or so on average for house songs, or in other words, half a second. As in, did you really think for a half a second that you would find love in, well, on one hand, literally a hole in the visceral kind of gross, again, body horror kind of way that we've seen multiple times in this album. And then on the other hand, a hole as in the pit of despair that he's in as he grieves this tumultuous relationship, the hole of depression in which the narrator finds himself. And then the second verse highlights the grim darkness of the kind of sexual encounters the narrator's been having as he says, "I'm drunk and you're probably on pills. And if we both have the same diseases," referring to the sexually transmitted ones. And then one final stanza before the crescendo of the chorus repeating toward the end of the song. "And the room fills with steam, evaporates, disappears. My point of entry is the same way that I will leave." And again, we see the double entendre in referring to the hole, referring at once to penetrative sex on a literal level, that being the only thing gained from this encounter, the point of entry being the same no matter what, and then also referring to leaving from this one-night stand the same way he entered, with nothing. Keep Yourself Warm is one of those songs that just sticks with you. It is so open and vulnerable and gritty and real, so disturbing and visceral. It just feels impossible to also be as poetic and emotional as it is. It, like much of this album, is like watching a body horror movie. And that theme of feeling separated from your body, feeling alien in your own skin, that is stronger on this song than any other on the album. And I think that's largely why this one resonates with so many people, including, for example, Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie, who did the cover on the Anniversary album I mentioned earlier, which is one of my favorite covers of all time. And then after Keep Yourself Warm, I think Scott knew when putting the album together that a break might be necessary, and we get another interlude titled Extrasupervery, or Extrasupervery, wherein the only lyrics are a simple refrain, "It's the year, oh, extra super very." And there is almost no understanding of what this means. Scott never addressed it directly. There's nothing on Genius. There's nowhere I could find online with anyone claiming to know for sure what it means. But I will tell you what I think it means, which is extra, super, very, as in like qualifiers of severity. It's just saying I'm feeling a lot this year. And I think to some degree, it's also kind of a warning for the last leg of the album, in my opinion, being extra, super, very dark, even by this album's extra, super, very high standards for that. The first of these final songs is Poke, which again features some body imagery on the first line, "Poke at my iris, why can't I cry about this?" Again, building on that theme of feeling like the human body isn't functioning, that it isn't mine, that I'm something else and my body isn't responding correctly or like following orders. And after that, Poke goes on to be maybe the most confessional, poetic, and like purely sad song on the album, as in it's not like disturbing, it's not visceral in the way that some of the other tracks are. It's just beautifully, tragically, like Shakespeareanly sad. Maybe there's something that you know that I don't. We adopt brand new language, communicate through pursed lips, and you try not to put on any sexy clothes or graces. I might never catch a mouse and present it in my mouth to make you feel you're with someone who deserves to be with you. But there's one thing that we've got going. It's the only thing worth knowing. It has a lot to do with magnets and the pull of the moon. This is just him lamenting their relationship's problems because ultimately he loves her and she loves him. And for whatever reason, that's not enough. And despite the gravity or the magnetism, the intangible force he implies in those last two lines of that stanza, which pull these two toward each other, he feels like he'll never be good enough for her, and she seems to feel the same way, and he is exhausted. Why won't our love keel over as it chokes on a bone, and we can mourn its passing and then bury it in snow? He longs for the sweet release of the relationship's demise, even though it, of course, isn't at all what he wants. And God, if I haven't been there at times in my life, like, Jesus Christ, this song, like, it's one of those songs that is just like it is written by a genius version of me. I feel like I can just read the last three stanzas here and move on without doing any real analysis. This is the best example of like the purely sad quality of the song that I mentioned earlier. You should look through some old photos. I adored you in every one of those. If someone took a picture of us now, they'd need to be told that we had ever clung and tied a navy knot with arms at night. I'd say she was his sister, but she doesn't have his nose. Like, they're so close that their friends have joked that they're siblings, the way that they feel like ancient and joke and seem to have always known each other. But then, and now, we're unrelated and rid of all the shit that we hated, but I hate when I feel like this, and I never hated you. And that last line of the song, which happens to be the last line of the album that provides any hope for the relationship central to the album's narrative to continue, is "and I never hated you." And that, like, I'm a hopeless romantic for sure, but y'all, that like makes me sick. Like, that is so haunting and beautiful and tragic. And then it gets worse. Hands down, the song that means the most to me, the song that kicks me in the chest the hardest on this album, the song that I credit with kind of saving my life a little bit, is Floating in the Fourth. The final crescendo of the body horror kind of motif, the final crescendo of the narrator's journey through grief and depression, the culmination of all the themes on the album of love lost, of suicidal ideation, of life and death and religion and being exhausted, and of feeling like a prisoner in one's body. Floating in the Fourth is ethereal and absolutely haunts me like a ghost. The song opens with a starkly literal first few lines. There is no confusion as to what this means, though it has a metaphorical quality to it as well, implying a finality to this one, that the relationship is really over, when it says, "So you just stepped out of the front of my house and I'll never see you again. I closed my eyes for a second, and when they opened, you weren't there. And then the song harkens back to the like modern Leper version of the character from the first track on the album, and we see the narrator feel absolutely gutted in the way that we've talked about a lot throughout this video, that body horror kind of way, feeling emotion in a physical, deeply physical way, breaking down emotionally in a way that feels literal and like physical, a mental breakdown presented as a physical one. And the door shut, I was vacuum packed, shrink wrapped out of air, and the spine collapsed and the eyes rolled back to stare at my starving brain. And then even something to me, and maybe I'm overanalyzing it, but even something as specific as the spine, the eyes, like those being separate from the character, those not being his, the spine, the eyes, to stare at my brain, right? That like they rolled back in the head to stare at his brain, and like he feels like he's trapped in his body, this like flesh suit. And then the absolute weirdest way of presenting relief and peace that I've ever read or heard. The narrator fully separates from his body, feeling the release and resulting relief of the relationship ending as he imagines himself dying because of this. And fully clothed, I float away, down the Forth into the sea. But then I think I'll save suicide for another day. This and the final line of the song are the two lines on the entire album that hit the hardest. First of all, knowing the wider context of Frightened Rabbit and of Scott Hutchison ultimately actually taking his life years later, if you've been depressed, you know exactly what that line means. Feeling happy, feeling hopeful is remission. You know in the back of your mind that you're not cured, you're in remission. And this line, while so beautiful after the turmoil of the narrative we've just been presented throughout the album, and us getting to see the narrator actually come to terms with the relationship being done, being over, and feeling optimistic about the future, is also so dark and gutting because it is saving it for another day. It is saying, right now I'm good. And that is so poignantly all that it's saying. The narrator then goes on to toy with this idea of his own death even further in the second verse. And I picture this corpse on the M8 hearse, and I half run away to sleep on a rolled up coat against the window with the strobe of the sun and the life I've led. Am I ready to leap? Is there peace beneath the roar of the Forth Road Bridge? On the northern side, there's a fife of mine and a boat in the port for me. I feel something so dramatically when I hear this song, when I read those lyrics, and from this verse in particular, it is so rich with imagery and so contradictory. The idea of like visually exploring one's potential suicide and speaking like positively of it, but then again saving it, like not now. It's like coming to terms with what seems to be an inevitability of taking his own life, but simultaneously somehow also coming to terms with his current life and feeling okay about that as well. It's so dark in that way. It's such an insight into the psyche of what it's like to be actually truly depressed. It's hopeless in its most hopeful moment. And fully clothed, I float away down the Forth into the sea. I'll steer myself through drunken waves. These manic gulls scream it's okay. Take your life, give it a shake. Gather up all your loose change. I think I'll save suicide for another year. Take your life, give it a shake is such a great line. It's so tongue-in-cheek. It's so playful in what is probably the heaviest moment on the entire album, the like double entendre there. And then even like the syntax and the format of the sentence, take your life and give it a shake. It's just like chills. And then now in one final change of lyrics for a chorus on the album, I think I'll save suicide for another year. The narrator is even more optimistic than before, but ultimately, and like we know from living in real life some 15 plus years later, not optimistic enough. He can put it off for another day, another year, but at some point he knows intuitively that he will have to reckon with these demons, and he's come to terms with that. And all that I can hope as a massive fan of this band, as someone to whom this album means the absolute world, as someone who has struggled with severe depression and anxiety and can relate to so much of this album in some ways more than I'd like to admit, I can only hope that the peace and acceptance to which Scott refers in this song is what he's getting to experience now. I hope that if you have watched this video all the way to the end, that you can come or have come to appreciate this album in the way that I do, that you get the weird sense of peace and safe place to explore your more dark, like mental moments that I get from this album. therapy is awesome and life-changing. There is always hope for the future. Life gets better and it gets worse, but it gets better, and there is so much beauty in a world that is much more beautiful with you in it. Thanks for watching. See y'all next time.